Hello, brothers and sisters. This is Sabata with the EQUATORIA Advocacy Foundation and Director for Resource Mobilization. I hope you guys are all doing fine wherever you are. The EQUATORIA Advocacy Foundation today would like to speak to the Equatorians that while the EQUATORIA Advocacy Foundation thinks that it's a good thing to retract along your tribal affiliations and hold conferences or conventions within your tribal affiliations, this is good so that you will be able to identify problems that are encountering you as individuals within those demographics. That is fine. However, as we, the people of Equatoria, are doing this within our tribal demographics, it is also very important to realize that those kind of problems that we have are shared problems. They are common amongst the people of Equatoria, or all the tribes that constitute Equatoria, this social group called Equatoria. For that reason, it is best to also hold onto the coalition of Equatoria very tight, because when you retract along your tribal lines and you identify the problems and you know where the problems are coming from, and it is pretty much because we lack what is called administrative institutions that are nationalistic in character, and that makes group of people whose faces are not reflected in power feel marginalized. For example, when you look at the security sector, it is predominantly one tribe, and the faces of Equatorians are not reflected in this institution, that is the security institution. And at the same time, the security institution is tribal in character. It is not national. And because it is tribal, it behaves or acts in a way that shows that it discriminates upon people who are Equatorians, and of course the other minority communities whose faces are not reflected in the security sector. For that reason, people who are not reflected in the security sector feel as though they are threatened or their peace are in threat, so they retract along tribal lines. This is normal. It is human nature. It is a reaction of human nature. But don't forget that when you start looking at what possible solutions you could do, you cannot bring those solutions along tribal lines and you think you will be able to make it. No. When you are bringing in a solution that is going to be effective, it has to be executed. The solution has to be executed through what is called a regional cooperation of the Equatoria. A simple example is when you look at the problems that is happening right now in Nimule, not only the Mahdi can solve that problem. It has to be the entire Equatoria to stand together. And that is why EQUATORIA Advocacy Foundation is working on organizing this teleconference to have the Equatorians speak with their representatives. Because when such a problem happens to the people of Mahdi, for example, in Nimule, it must take all the Equatoria representatives who are representing Equatoria East, Central, West to come together and basically put some complaints to the state or to the government to push the government to have this problem solved, or see exactly who within the government institution seem to be behind the influx of things like cattle and encouraging a settlement of a group of people who are not originally from the area of Nimule, and allow such kind of behaviors that makes the people of Madi uncomfortable, that makes them go sometimes out of Nimule. So when you realize, even though you come together in tribal lines, but as you try to inject a solution to those problems, you cannot bring about solutions only within the parameters of your tribes. You will need a coalition of all the Equatorians. So while you hold onto those tribal activities, make sure you also promote agenda of unity amongst the Equatorians. Make sure you support activities that bring Equatorians together, because it is only when we come together and we talk about those things together and we feel that it is our shared problems. Even when we, the Equatorians, decide to support political parties who are talking about national reforms in the country, we make sure that we are supporting a political party that seems to be addressing the problems and offering solutions that correspond to what we think are really solutions. All right? If there are political parties who are talking strictly about having federalism be implemented, these are the kind of political parties that Equatorians would want to rally behind. Because if we had federalism, in fact, we wouldn't have seen all these problems that are taking place, because we would eventually be having our own youth police our states. You see, our region, all the states that constitute the region of the Equatoria. And when we have our own youth police, that is, they are the law enforcement officers. They are the ones implementing the laws that the representatives of these territories are bringing out in the parliament. Then we wouldn't be seeing all these problems and challenges that we are seeing right now, that's basically pushing us now to retract along tribal lines. So the message that the EQUATORIA Advocacy Foundation would want to give out is that while you are exercising your activities within the tribal levels, make sure that you are promoting the unity of all Equatorians, and make sure you are engaged in discussion of what is called way forward agenda, how Equatorians will eventually encounter the problems that are facing all the tribes that of course constitute what is called Equatoria. This is basically a short a message that the EQUATORIA Advocacy Foundation would like to share with you fellow Equatorians, and this is because EQUATORIA Advocacy Foundation has realized that Equatorians are at this time getting consumed to their tribal affiliation, and they tend to shut their doors along their tribal affiliations and not basically building up the coalition of what is called Equatoria, which is very dangerous, because without Equatoria, you have already divided yourself and you make yourself weak. And once you are weak, that's it. A problem in Nimule will be called Madi problem. A problem Bukura but Bukura in Pageri, in Yei, it will be said, oh, the problem with Anas bita Yei. Bukura but Bukura, a problem will happen somewhere in Lotuko, it will be said, oh, this is a problem of the people of Lotuko. And eventually that is going to be it. There is going to be no clear resistance from what is called Equatoria. And I also want to, from my personal note, discourage the idea of other Equatorians who would clearly try to distinct themselves from the other tribes. When you come around and you say, you know, we have a problem here, the people of this particular tribe are facing this in their place, and some individuals would want to say, oh yeah, this is their own problem, but as far as our problem, these kind of things will not allow it in our territory. No. It is just a matter of time. It can creep to your territory if you don't solidify yourself in this block of Equatoria and start addressing these issues as early as possible before they become too late. All right. Sometimes back, the people of Zande had faced problems, you know, until they formed what is called the Aro Boys. But still, because they kind of tried to solve the problems by themselves, and that did not work out. There are some times when the people of Yei River, it used to be state, around those areas also faced problems. We have seen Mukwaya, the people of Mukwaya face problems, and some people want to say, no, the Equatoria Advocacy Foundation wants to encourage you people to realize that these are not problems with Amadi, these are not problems with Apojuludis, these are problems of the Equatoria. And we have to see ourselves as one, and we should own those challenges, all right? And while we retract along tribal lines during our conferences, tribal conferences, we talk about those problems, but let us all realize that in order to bring solution, we need the solidarity of the Equatoria. Thank you very much. God bless you. Until we meet again, stay safe from COVID-19. God bless you.